You live in Los Angeles?
I do. I live outside of Los Angeles, but it's crazy here, man. We just got through with the horrific firestorms, and so there's a lot of places, and there was another big fire last November out closer to our house. We live about halfway between LA and Santa Barbara, and so all the burn areas are sitting there, and now there's this atmospheric river coming through, and it's just, so I wish that the river would have come through a few weeks ago, and put the fires out. But you know, that's part of life in Southern California. Where are you from, man?
I live in Southern California. I live in Los Feliz, right there by the Greek Theater.
Okay, then you know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I'm just in Vegas doing some shows. I'm a comedian, so I'm out here for a week.
Nice. Where you working?
I'm working at the Comedy Cellar, one of the best clubs in America. It's at the Rio Hotel, and
Okay.
the Comedy Cellar and the Comedy Store are probably the two best comedy clubs in America, hands down.
Oh, nice. From the artist from the comedian standpoint, just the way is the vibe of the place or the way you're treated. What is it that makes it the best?
It's the reputation of the level of comedy. So the audiences are fantastic. They're not surface audiences of like, oh, let's go see Beatles Love and then check a little
Right.
comedy and then go down to the Pinball Hall of Fame, you know?
Well, I know, but you don't want to. If you're in Vegas, you do not want to miss the Pinball Hall of Fame. I mean,
Oh,
that's top of the bucket list, right?
it's insane. I actually interviewed the owner of that place.
Wait, that's a
Uh,
real thing?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, I thought
This
you were
guy,
kidding.
no, you got to go there when you're in Vegas. It's every machine from 1950
Oh,
all the way to
God.
now.
Oh, that's awesome. Dude, we did a gig maybe last year before last. There's a place, I think it's called Arnold's Park in Iowa, and it's an old, like it was built in the 50s, the place is built around a 50s amusement park, but now they've got a proper amphitheater and they've turned it into a whole trip. But it's in the dressing room, they've got that same vibe, everything, like it's just like you're in the 50s, man. They had in our dressing room, they had one of those. I'm probably a little older than you, but you might remember the old baseball game where
Oh, I know
you got
that with the
the bat
bat.
on one end and the pitch on the other, and the ball kind of comes out under the pitcher's mound. And the beauty is they're free. You don't need quarters, so you can just stand there and like geek out on these things, man. It was awesome.
That game's amazing because you smash that metal puck and the bat swings and you could get it in the upper deck.
I know. If you hit the ramp just right, man. Oh man, no better feeling than hitting the ramp and knocking it out of the park.
Let me tell you a little history I have with REO Speedwagon,
All
and
right.
it's August 2nd, 1981,
Mm.
Oakland Coliseum, Day on the Green. I'll read you the bill. 38 Special, Gamma, UFO, Kansas, REO Speedwagon headlining.
That's an 80s bill right there. But I'll tell you that I'll never forget that show because that was that was the day that our the late great Gary Richrath, my partner in art and crime and everything else, and he was on the hunt that day. So he kind of slid out of the backstage area to just kind of mingle a little bit, socialize out in the outside the secure area, right? And then we couldn't find him. We're like, oh geez. And he did have a propensity to disappear sometimes for periods of time. And so we're like, oh man, what are we gonna do? Where's Gary, man? All of a sudden we get a, and this is before cell phones.
Of
So
course.
somebody comes back to our tour manager and says, hey man, there's a guy out at the backstage entrance. He doesn't have any ID or any credentials, and he's claiming to be Gary Richrath from REO Speedwagon, and he's demanding that I get this message to you. And of course, it was Richrath. He forgot his backstage pass and got caught with his pants down outside the secure area. So, but we did it. It was that that was a heady time, man. That you saw REO Speedwagon at a time where, in our wildest dreams, we could never have even imagined the level of just everything, there in 1981. And then, MTV comes out at the same time. And so we go from this, they used to call us a faceless Midwest band. That was our reputation in the press, and suddenly our faces were in everybody's living room, and it just added another level of fuel to this raging fire that we were in the middle of. But it was a gas. I'm glad you were there. I'm glad you were able to see it.
Well, the late great Bill Graham was a genius, and he had been doing those Day on the Greens for years. And I never missed any of them, because it was always the ultimate bills, and they happened all summer. And the scrims that were painted by Dennis Larkins to create
Right.
this amazing, looking stage instead of just scaffolding, and
Yeah.
and you'd get there like 10 a.m. and a band would go on, the first one I went to was 1978. It was Cheap Trick, AC/DC, Journey, just got Steve Perry, Blue Oyster Cult, Ted Nugent, man. So it's like these bills, Zeppelin's last show ever in America was at a Day in the Green in 77. So Bill was on it, man.
Well, it was actually when Richrath was not being let backstage. It got all the way to Bill Graham. It was Bill Graham who was saying no to him.
Yeah.
No backstage pass. Sorry, buddy. I don't care who you are. But yeah, boy, AC/DC being, that's pretty heavy. They did okay over the years.
Well, yeah, that's the Power Age tour, so it's really wild to think about that. But really, what I think is wild is to think about I come on to you guys on the live record, and then you can't tune a fish, That era is when I'm hearing you on San Francisco radio. And then all of a sudden, you guys are playing in front of 60,000 from the Hi Infidelity, record. That's got to be mind-boggling.
Yeah, it was. Well, the good thing about it was that we had been we'd been playing, since the early '70s. We started in clubs, and just worked our way up to VFW halls and bigger clubs, theaters. So by the time High Infidelity hit, a lot of people. To a lot of people, that was our first album. They hadn't heard of us before, but we'd been working our way up to bigger and bigger venues for almost 10 years. So it wasn't as big of a shock to the system to us as you might think. We had done plenty of shows as support in stadiums and stuff like that, and so. Yeah, in 1980 we opened for Bob Seger in Madison Square Garden, and in 1981 we sold it out ourselves. So that was kind of mind blowing. But when I was 12 years old, man, and I'd been playing guitar for a couple of years, didn't really know why. Was too young for Elvis. And my babysitter, who lived next door, she was about 5 years older than me. She said, there's a band I've been hearing about. They're English, and they're going to be on TV Sunday night. You might want to check them out. So I did, and the Beatles came on and played I Saw Her Standing There, and I Want to Hold Your Hand, and it just blew my mind. All I can tell you is at 12 years old, suddenly it was like, oh, I see why I've been practicing guitar playing, old Susanna and Down in the Valley for 2 years. I was like, that's what I want to do. Yeah, me and 50 million other kids my age. But I just that just set me off on a trajectory. And it's my daughter talks about manifestation. She went through a phase where she would come home and she would like light this cool candle and burn sage, and we would do this whole thing as a family of manifesting. And I went along with it because I love my daughter, and it was just it was a nice, peaceful, cool thing to do. But it got me thinking, and I started thinking, well, there are some things that I didn't realize I was manifesting, but I was. And it occurred to me that that it's like, if there's something that you really want to do, just don't do anything that gets in the way of that. Not that you're gonna, figure out how to make it happen. It's more like just not putting up any roadblocks to it, being open, to see where life takes you, but kind of in the back of your mind, whether it's subconscious or not, you're not doing anything that would get in the way of that. And it's happened to me a couple of times in my life. And so that's kind of an interesting concept that I've been thinking about lately. Anyway.
I believe in that stuff too. You just, if you have a negative energy or you're not thinking that you're going to get somewhere, you're never going to really get there. It's
Right.
like I started comedy at 44 years old, and people are like, you're too old. And it's like, nah, I don't believe that, and,
I was just going to ask you that, but go ahead.
it's just wild to think, because I was like, 44, that's nothing, it's not
Right.
90,
Right.
so yeah, you have to I mean, if you look at people and they're like, I just saw that Becoming Zeppelin film, these guys, they get together, lightning in a bottle, and they're like, we're doing this, and they did it.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that. Yeah, that's next on my bucket list of streaming shows for sure.
Let me ask you something. This is wild. I never knew. And, you know, it's really bizarre to think about. REO Speedwagon had three singers, you know, and back then, a record label, if you lost your singer, you would just be gone. You know what I mean? That's the big deal. Like, so you got one singer, they get a deal in 71 on Epic, then another singer, then you join, you quit, you come back 3 years later. That is lunacy and unheard of, to be able to hold on to a record deal and an audience that doesn't go, they lost their singer, they're no good now.
Yeah, well, it's really a testament to Gary Richrath once again, because I'll tell you that in my opinion, for him to be left out of the conversation of the greatest live rock and roll lead guitarist ever it's a travesty, man. If you saw it, you saw it on Day of the Green, that Gary, the way he played, and just the way he had these beautiful Les Paul guitars that he collected, and he would literally dance with them. He just held them. The guitar was an extension of his body, and he had these fringed guitar straps, and he would do these. I mean, he would literally, he didn't realize it, but he was kind of doing ballet moves. I mean, he would spin with these things, and I mean, and the way he played was so unique. And I think that was the glue that really kept Epic involved. And also, it didn't hurt to have Irving Azoff as the band's manager either. Irving, REO Speedwagon was Irving's first management client. He had REO and Danny Fogelberg, and the late great Danny Fogelberg as well. But Yeah, I think it was Richrath that held it together. And then, the lead singer shuffle that went on for the first 5 or 6 years of the band, that was the band just trying to figure out who they were because, Terry Luttrell was a, gravel-throated kind of blues singer, and he was great at it. But then I think Gary realized, it's the old adage, you got your whole life to write the first album and you got a year to write the second. And I think Gary realized that he needed he needed somebody else to write with him. So that's why I got the gig because, it wasn't because I was a great singer. I don't kid myself. And then Murphy came in, and Murph was a great R&B singer, great keyboard player,
Oh,
guitar
he's
player.
killer, man.
Yeah,
Wow.
really is, but it didn't really mesh with the rest of the band very well. It always seemed I went and saw him once. I'd been out of the band for a couple of years. I went and saw him, and it was actually that gig where I was standing on the side of the stage, and Murph is out there singing, and he's great, and just super talented. But then they got to this song called "Like You Do," which was on the second album, which was the first song that I ever learned when I joined the band, and I sang on the record, and I was standing there, and I'm just like, that is my gig, and I let it slip away, and I guess I must have started manifesting again because within a year I was back. But yeah, so I'm talking too much. Talk, say something.
No, no. I mean, it's really a crazy story because you leave the band. There's some kind of tension. What was the tension? Because you here you got this gig and then you leave.
Yeah, well, the tension was that I came from being in a band that was, we played Buffalo Springfield covers, Moby Grape covers, originals. And I wasn't even the lead singer. We had two of us sang, and we were kind of like a duo, kind of harmony singing, and it was more. I played Rickenbacker 12 string. It was more of a folk rock thing, right? And when I joined REO, they were it was a stack of Marshalls, a stack of SVTs on the other side of the stage. You know, you never had good monitors. So I just was singing so hard, and I never had taken voice lessons, so I didn't know what I was doing. And eventually my vocal cords started to fail me. So I went to a doctor who told me that I needed to stop singing for 3 weeks and don't talk for 6 weeks, some ridiculous thing. And I'm just like, and I'd only been in the band for about a year, and I'm like, I can't tell anybody this. I'll lose the gig. So in typical, the way I was brought up fashion, I just stuffed the feelings and tried to fake my way through it. And I didn't talk when I didn't have to, and I didn't want to sing at rehearsals, and I didn't tell anybody why.
Wow.
And so they were left just thinking that I was being a dick, that I was just, thought I was, too good to sing at rehearsal, and I was, aloof. But really, I was just scared shitless, and eventually it caught up with me, and they sent me packing, and so it was a wake up call, but during the couple of years that I was away from the band. I'll be honest with you. I went through a year of tough times. I was, because I thought I was going to come right out and get a solo album deal, and it didn't happen. And so that was humiliating. I just felt like it was really bad, man. I was pretty depressed, and but after about a year, I just kind of I made some changes, and I started working again. I literally got a gig in a restaurant in Chicago. I'm from Chicago, so I got a restaurant gig, playing on a little stage in the corner of a loud restaurant. And, I'd be up there, singing, Fire and Rain. And right in the middle of the song, it'd be, Murphy, table of four, your table's ready. I'm like, I go from headlining Kiel Auditorium in St. Louis to, singing during happy hour at the Rusty Scupper in Chicago. But it was like that's what I needed to do, and that led to a gig at a really cool singer-songwriter club on Lincoln Avenue in Chicago called the Bulls. It led to gigs at the Earl of Old Town and the Quiet Night, places where Steve Goodman and John Prine used to play, right? So I got into the singer-songwriter vibe, and so it taught me a lot. It gave me a lot of confidence. So when I got the call to come back to REO, I had a bunch of tunes written, and I was kind of ready to step up and not be the new guy anymore. I was ready to look at Gary eye to eye, as opposed to looking up to him, and that's what I needed. I needed to feel like I was an equal member of the band, and when we got to that point, then it started to happen. Then this new sound of REO Speedwagon started to evolve.
At any point did you, because I sang for 25 years and I understand that whole thing. At any point did you get nodes or anything? Because now singing's just got to be, so easy with the in-ear monitors compared to then singing over these Marshalls. Like you said, it's ridiculous. Sometimes once a year I do a Bon Scott tribute and I walk over by a Marshall full stack and I just go, what the fuck? Like I used to sing in front of those every night in a small shitty rehearsal room, just on 125 dB, man. And those things are punishing now.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. The in-ear monitors, they changed my life. I got turned on to them by Lou Gramm, by the great Lou Gramm.
Yeah.
Who, in my book, if you put the Mount Rushmore of classic rock singers, Lou is definitely up there, for sure. And he's a great guy as well. But he turned me on to the in-ear monitors, and wow, that was in the early 90s, and it changed my life for sure. Definitely.
How good are they now compared to the 90s? Because I've been out of the game for like 16, 18 years. So I wasn't in the in-ear monitor game, but they've got to be like just state of the art now.
Oh yeah, you can get them where there's a little microphone in there, so you can dial in the crowd. The only bad part about them is that you can't feel. I like to feel the crowd because I'm kind of I'm not telling you anything you don't know when I tell you that getting a laugh, people can give you courtesy applause. There's no such thing as courtesy laughter. If you make somebody laugh, that's just a win, and to me, it's one of the best feelings in the world. As a matter of fact, I'll share something with you that is kind of I write about it in my book, but and I don't remember when it started, but I have a thing that I love to be hanging out with a professional comedian and get a laugh out of them, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I got a list of comedians who I've hung out with and gotten the laugh,
Who are they? Who are they?
Oh man, well, I've become friendly with Scott Thompson, Carrot Top, and he's a great comedian. His show is incredible if you're in Vegas, and he's also a great audience. Mel Brooks, I got a laugh from Mel Brooks.
Wow.
I got a laugh from David Spade on stage. We were playing a gig, and there were 4 empty seats in the first row, and the rest of the amphitheater was sold out, and it was light out, and so we're playing, and all of a sudden these 3 just hot girls walk in and sit in 3 of the chairs, and there's still 1 empty seat. And the guitar solo for "Can't Fight This Feeling" comes on. And at the beginning of Can't Fight, another hot girl comes in, takes the 4th seat, and then here comes Spade. He walks in, and one of those seats was his, and I look at him, and he looks up at the stage, and I go, "Sorry, man," like this, and he just cracked up, so because he was probably with all 4 of them, But the top one, the best one was Albert Brooks. So Albert Brooks did that movie Drive, where
Yeah.
he plays the badass. I mean, there's not a laugh in it. He's just a nasty, humorless, son of a bitch, right? And so for some reason, they, so I, it's a long story, but anyway, we were at an event, and I was sitting at a table, and Albert was sitting. It was an event for that movie, and I was sitting like he was. We were back to back at different tables, and I'm like, I love Albert Brooks. I've been a fan of his since the very beginning. So didn't get an opportunity to say hello to him. So at the very end, my wife and I were out in the valet area outside Chateau Marmont, and I look across, and there's Albert and his wife, and there's no one else there. We're both waiting for our cars. He's not talking to his wife at the moment, and I'm like, this is my moment. So I walk over to Albert, and I go, "Hey, Albert, hi, I'm Kevin. I've been a fan of yours since the very beginning, and I love the movie. And you, wait, whoa, oh shit, what was the line? And it was a great, whatever it was. It just caught him off guard. I said something like, "Oh," I go, "and you were hilarious." That was the line, and because he wasn't funny at all, I go, I love the movie, and you were hilarious." And he literally did a spit take. It was. So that was my crowning jewel of this. But getting a laugh from when I tell little stories between songs, every once in a while I'll say something funny and I'll get a laugh. Well, if I got a laugh tonight, guess what? I'm doing that same gag tomorrow night because
Yeah.
it's just the best feeling ever. So good for you, man. I'm for you to make the transition from singing Bon Scott to playing at the Comedy Store. That's respect for that, because it's also the hardest gig in the world, I think, stand up.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, that and I would say Broadway plays,
Well,
because
there's that.
you have to remember all that stuff and you can't just kind of check out, So yeah. You go see comedy at all?
Oh yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, we're neighbors down the street with Patrick Warburton, and he was famously putty on Seinfeld, and he's done many things. He does a character in Family Guy. He's a great dude. Does a charity event every March. It's coming up in Palm Springs. But he's been doing stand up, and we just saw him a couple of weeks ago out in Oxnard. There's a nice comedy venue in Oxnard, believe it or not. It's
Oh yeah.
about
I've done
400. The
I've
place
done
I'm
it many
talking.
times. Great at the mall there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Levity Live or whatever. Oxnard.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And he had a guy opening for him that killed. I can't think of his name, but no, I love when we lived in town, I used to go to the Improv all the time. Matter of fact, the way that Tommy Shaw and I met and kind of started the relationship that has led to the many tours that I've done with Styx. We met at the Improv on Melrose at a Craig Shoemaker show, and just kind of hit it off. We were with our wives, and the rest is kind of rock and roll history with Styx, and we're going out on tour with them again this year. So
Yeah, that's going to be wild. Now you're doing the high infidelity record, and they're doing what? Grand Illusion?
yeah, we're both doing doing the whole albums, and both REO and Styx have done several residencies at the Venetian Theater in Vegas, and we did the High Infidelity show 3 times, and we put together a whole new presentation for the residency, as did Styx for their Grand Illusion residency. And so this summer we just thought, you know what? Those shows did so well and people reacted so well to them, because you play the whole album and then you also do all the hits that people want to do too. So it's a cool thing, and it's unique because we've never done it. Neither band has ever done it anywhere else except in Vegas. And so, the guys who we did it as REO Speedwagon 3 times over the past year and a half. But that same band is going to be touring this year, as the Kevin Cronin band because of I'm not able to tour as REO Speedwagon anymore.
Why is that?
Well, that's a good question. It's a complicated question, but God, it's a tough one because our bass player Bruce Hall, he and I worked together for almost 50 years. I was instrumental in getting him in the band. He and I, any side project I ever did, Bruce was part of it. But over the past several years, things became a little bit of a struggle for us. Just musically, personally, and physically, and then Bruce has had back problems for a long time, and it finally just gave out on him, and we had a week before the first Las Vegas residency, so he had to go home and take care of his health, and we could have either canceled the residency and the gigs that to follow, but I put so much of my heart and soul into that residency show, and I didn't want to. And people plan their vacations. People come to Vegas from Europe and stuff, and I just was like, if I can pull this off, I got to try to do it. Without Bruce. And we just got lucky that Elton John had retired, and our buddy Matt Bissonette, who had been with Elton for 12 years, was available. He came in. Whole show he came in with charts for every song, and within 2 days the charts were gone. He had the bass parts. Then he goes, teach me the harmony, the vocal harmonies. I'm like, okay, gave him all the harmony parts, and he's just an amazing bass player, great singer, good dude, and the chemistry between Dave and Brian, who have been with me in REO Speedwagon for 35 plus years, and Derek Hilland, who took over when Neil Doughty retired in late 2022. The 5 of us just something happened, something magical happened, and but Matt was subbing for Bruce, and Bruce was his doctors told him he'd be ready on March 1st of 2024, and he wasn't. He wasn't there, and then it got pushed back to June 1st. And meanwhile, I'm thinking by this time, I'm not sure what's going to happen. Bruce, he had major back surgery. And there were some other issues that, the musical issues that had popped up, but I was just, because he was supposed to be there March 1st, didn't do it. And I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen here. So my thought was, let's keep Matt in the band. So when Bruce joins, it'll just be a 6-piece group. I was working on a set list where Bruce and Matt could kind of switch off between bass and acoustic guitar. And it was going to be a little awkward, but at least that we would have the insurance and Bruce would have the security that if for whatever reason because the show is one thing, getting on and off the bus, packing your bags, getting out of hotel rooms when you have major back surgery at 70 years old, that's tough, So I needed Matt as an insurance policy. And then I out of nowhere, I understand through an attorney that Bruce has decided to sit out the 2024 tour as long as he gets paid in full as if he were touring. And so we didn't have much choice. That's what we did, and that's what he accepted. And we went ahead and finished the 2024 tour with Matt Bissonette on bass, 5-piece band. it was the most successful tour we've had in 35 years. The band was just on fire. The crowds were crazy, and it became this just good vibes thing that, and my thing, I'm the lead singer of the band. I'm also, I didn't run for office, but I became the leader of the band. I'm the guy who's, pulls it together. And so, I just felt the band lifting me up in a way that I hadn't felt in a long time. And it really felt good. And I felt like I was lifting them up, and there was just this positive vibe going on. And so that's,
I get it, man. I get it.
yeah.
I played music 25 years. I understand. It's like some people, they don't want to look like they're going to quit. So they throw drama in the scene, and then, they get fired, and then they say, oh, it's those guys did this to me. When really they want to leave. Their body is failing. Their mind is not in it. Their heart's not in it. And then you get a dude that comes in that's good vibes, and you're like, oh wow. And it changes the whole dynamic of a tour,
Well, yeah. Well, Bruce was never fired. That I don't
Right.
I don't have the right to fire him. And it's funny because there was kind of a narrative, an inaccurate narrative that was kind of circulating online, where that put it in terms of that I somehow quit REO Speedwagon to pursue a solo career, and that's bullshit.
Yeah.
And then there was another narrative that I somehow prevented Bruce from touring with the group in 2024, when the truth is I was trying to find a way that he could tour with the band in 2024. And what I understood is that he decided to sit the tour out. So I don't know exactly why. I can't tell you, because he never called and talked to me about it. But he did make some demands that he said that he'd be ready to come back in 2025. But he put these demands in place that there were a number of demands, but two in particular. And I've kind of stayed above the weeds here on this thing, because I don't really feel like the fans care to know or need to know the inner, if you've been in bands, it's like shit goes on, and it's a brotherly thing, and there's a lot of relationships are love hate, and things get weird for a while, and then things get worked out. But there was a couple of demands that one of them, it would have been irresponsible for me to go along with. And the other one, it was impossible for me to go along with. And so we just hit a stalemate. And the way our band is set up, Neil, Bruce, and I are the three kind of heritage members. Even though Dave and Brian have been with us for 35 years, they weren't there when the records were recorded. So
Right.
there was a special relationship between the three of us. And there was a kind of a retirement situation that was built in, so that if anyone left the band for whatever reason, they were well taken care of, as long as the band continues touring. So it was a sweet deal but Bruce, he just feels like if he's not in the band, then the band, it can't be REO Speedwagon. And to me, it's like if there's two guys in a band who can't work together anymore, and one of them has the ability to keep the band going and keep the legacy going and keep playing the songs for the fans who we've nurtured over a 50-year period, and the other guy can't do that, well then it's incumbent on the other guy to go, all right, maybe my time's up, go ahead. I mean, that's what Bunny Carlos did when Bunny
Yeah.
and couldn't work together anymore. It was one or the other of them was going to leave the band. Bunny stepped down gracefully, and it was like, yeah, because if Robin steps down, well, what are they going to do? You know, that Robin is the face and the voice of the band, and for whatever reasons, Bruce was listening to people that were giving him advice, I guess, to it's like if you're not in the band, then burn the whole thing down. And at any rate, I'm
Yeah.
not going to stop. Nobody can stop me from singing these songs, playing these songs, and giving the fans what they want. And if you want the REO Speedwagon experience, there's only one place you're going to get it, and that's the Kevin Cronin band. It's the same band. Where I'm not going out there and singing a solo album worth of songs. I'm singing the songs that I wrote for REO Speedwagon and the songs that Gary and I worked on together with REO Speedwagon.
Yeah.
You know, but Richard Marks and I got together recently, and we've been friends for 40 years. He did his first tour opening for REO Speedwagon in '87, and we've been friends ever since. Talk about a voice, Jesus! I mean, Richard is just like unbelievable. But we wrote a song together. Been friends for 40 years, never wrote together, and we finished. I rewrote the lyrics, sent it to Richard. It was like, this is it. The music is beautiful and it rocks. And Richard goes, he's like, KC, is this the best song you've written in 20 years? And I go, Richie, how about you? Is this the best song you've written in 20 years? And we both were like, yeah. And it's a rockin' song, and it's kind of a cool vibe because we wanted to write. When we sat down to write, Richard said, I want to write something that's masculine, But to me, masculinity is not being a tough guy. It's not being macho necessarily. There's a way to be masculine and also appreciate the woman in your life and realize that without her, you wouldn't be the man you are. And this song is called "All Because of You," and the opening line of the chorus says, I'm a better man than I think I am, and it's all because of you. And it's just this rocking thing. I can't wait to play it live. And I might not be able to do it this summer because the set times are pretty tight, but I'm going to work that into the show eventually.
Is that released anywhere, or is that out?
Well, no, it's not. And Richard went in and cut the track, and then we did our vocals together. Richard sang the lead, and I sang the harmony parts. And then we got an idea, because I've got this new thing going. I was like, hey, Richard, what about if I record a version with my band? I sing lead and you sing the harmonies. And he was like, oh, that's freaking awesome. And then we got another idea, which I don't want to talk about, because if it happens, it would take incredible timing and coordination. But we're not going to be in competition with each other. Put it that way.
Right.
We'll because we co-wrote the song. It's like, if Richard's version gets some traction, great. If my version if the Kevin Cronin band gets some traction, great. Who cares? It's the song that we both love, and so we'll. I don't think it's going to be out anytime before this summer.
Let me ask you. You were part of the old MTV Behind the Music, and the formula is almost comedic. They wanted it all. They were hungry. Then they got it all. Then the fall. Every time it was the same thing. But I'll tell you, man.
But here's the deal. That's not Behind the Music making that up. That's just how it works.
Right. It's just truth, rock and roll.
Exactly.
But man, your particular episode, when it gets to Gary, it gets so dark. It's like, whoa, those were some really dark times for your band, man.
Yeah. It was, and it was Yeah, it was dark, and we went through a lot together. I mean, we lived through the age of MTV. We also lived through the age of cocaine,
Yeah.
where and we used to record at the old record plant in Los Angeles, which was the studio in Los Angeles. You'd be walking down the hallway, and I'll never forget. I was walking down the hallway one day, and here comes George Harrison around the corner, and he walks up to me, gives me a big hug. Hey, mate, what you working on? I'd never met him before, but if you were recording at the record plant, it was almost like being a member of a private club. The Eagles would be down here, and Joe Walsh would be over in this studio, and but all of a sudden we heard about this new drug that wasn't addictive, and it was like it made everybody more creative, and everybody was like, wow, what's this stuff? And it just so happened that all the second engineers at the plant had a little side hustle going. So it's like all night. It's like the blow never ran out, and as far as we knew, we weren't paying for it. Well, guess what? We were paying for it, and it caught up to it caught up to a lot of people. And the sinister part of drugs is that you don't know if you're going to be one of the guys who does it for a while, parties and then goes, I've had about enough of this, and moves on, or if you're going to be one of the guys who it captures in a bear trap, and you can't get out of it. And I tell my kids, I told my sons when they were young, I go, you don't know until it's too late. So if you can avoid it, don't go there, man. And so in our band, we kind of had it started in 78, and by 82, some of us were like, this is, the after party was becoming more important than the show.
Right.
That's when the light bulb went off over my head, and I'm like, wait a second. I love to play when, if people are going to be spending their hard-earned money to come and hear us, I want to be at our best. I don't want to be hungover from the night before, And so some of us got on a health kick. We hired a nutritionist and went in that direction, and other guys didn't. And God love him, man. We had an intervention with Gary, and he was open to it. He didn't fight back, and he was the first guy in the band that actually went into a treatment program. And this was in the mid '80s, when nowadays everybody goes to rehab, but back in those days it was no one. We didn't even know what it was. We had one friend who knew what it was, and so Gary tried, man, and when he came out, he was like, it was like, yeah, that's the guy. That's the guy that I met in 1972. He was just a freaking stud, and he was back, and it was like, yes. But by the end of that '87 tour, we started seeing, wine carafes on the room service trays outside of Gary's room, it's just an insidious freaking thing, and it just, I thought, because when I got escorted out of the band, so to speak, like I say, I had a rough year, but then it inspired me to get back into it, So, nothing else was working with Gary, so I thought maybe his bottom would be being out of the band, and so I told him, I drove out to his house. I'm like, man, I can't work with you anymore. I'm sorry, I just can't do it. I can't make another album like the last one. And so, I never expected that his hiatus would be permanent. I figured maybe a year or two down the road, he'd be at my door, ready to go, and but it never happened. And Behind the Music was supposed to be the unspoken plan was that Gary and I were going to get together in a studio for the first time in 10 years and see what happened. And I was up for it. I was like, hey, and I actually talked to Dave Amato about it. I said, Dave, if this works out, we might become a 6-piece band. Are you open to that? And he was like, yeah, I don't think would have been his first choice, but he was like, yeah, sure, we'll make it work. But I said something in the interview, kind of what I just said to you. I said, I always expected that Gary would be back, and I said, and the door was always open. He just had to show up ready to rock and walk through it. And so the interviewer quoted me in his interview with Gary, and that pissed him off because he didn't see it that way. And so he was like, fuck this, fuck this idea. I'm not going in the studio. And but fortunately, a couple of years before he passed away, we kind of patched things up, and so we left on good terms.
I just saw some footage that the very last time he ever played with you guys, he came on stage somewhere and played. And I think it was, wow, what song did he do?
No, I know exactly. I know exactly what it was, man. No, I know exactly what it was. It was a tornado came through Illinois and destroyed a little town called Washington, Illinois, which is not far from Peoria, which is where Gary's from. Right. And we had heard that Gary moved back from LA to Peoria, which I thought was awesome. I thought that would, get out of LA, get away from all the, bad memories and come back to Illinois where Peoria, he's a star in Peoria. He's, Peoria's favorite son, him and Danny Fogelberg. And
Richard Pryor.
Oh, Richard Pryor too. You're right, man. I forgot about that. Yeah. But so when the tornado destroyed this town, I got a call from Robin Zander, and he's like, dude, you want to do something for this? I'm like, I absolutely. And, so I called Tommy Shaw, and we put together this concert on a moment's notice in the field house of the University of Illinois in Bloomington Normal. Sold it out. Richard Marx came, played a solo piano version of Right Here Waiting. And there were 17,000 people in this giant arena. You could have heard a pin drop. I mean, it was so beautiful. I mean, I was crying backstage. But the very last thing, we closed the show, and our closing song was Riding the Storm Out.
Yeah.
And it was like, and Gary showed up with one of his Les Pauls backstage, and we were, we got a moment together, and when he came out, I looked over to my left, and there he was with with this Les Paul, and he had this look on his face, and he didn't look the same as he looked back in the day, but I looked over at him, and we kind of nodded like, okay, let's do this. And I'll never forget it, man. He flicked his toggle switch down, reached down for his volume control, cranked it up, and I made the motion for the synth siren, yeah. And he did that spin move, man, with that guitar, and it was just it took everything that I had to not break down crying right then, man, and it was it was the last time I saw him alive, and but I'm glad that we were able to have that moment, and he's amazing, and I just, every time I talk to someone in an interview who's kind of like yourself, I talked to Eddie Trunk yesterday who gets it, and everybody always says, Richrath, how come, and I did a radio interview years ago, and Slash was on the phone with me. It was with Mancow in Chicago. And Slash kind of has a little bit of a Richrath vibe when he plays. And so I asked him about it, and he was like, yeah, he goes, I got a little Richrath in me, so So and I was glad to hear that, because Slash he's one of those guys who just got an amazing style, an amazing. You can always tell it's Slash playing, and he's just a good dude. And so
It's
Gary
funny.
Mark.
I was cruising down the road and I heard Riding the Storm Out on Sirius XM. And this is about a month ago before I knew I was going to interview you. So on one of my episodes, I was talking about how insane of a player this guy was.
Oh,
And
awesome.
oh
Okay.
yeah, and I was like, I mean, you know, I'm listening to it driving down the road, and I just go, man, this guy is insane. It's just so fluid and super killer lead runs that are just so original, and his tone was fantastic.
Yeah.
And even today, I went and watched Live Aid because you guys played Live Aid in '85,
Oh,
and
God.
and there he was, and I was like, listen to that tone, it had to be like 10 a.m. or some shit you guys are playing.
Oh, yeah.
And he, the bandana, the spin around, and I was thinking, was it Jimmy Page? Was that his guy?
Now his guy was Jeff Beck.
Wow.
Jeff
Wow.
Beck all the way. And
Wow.
Gary turned, and we were both Yardbirds fans, of course. But he turned me on to some of Jeff Beck's solo instrumental stuff. And because Gary used to like to, Gary wasn't one of these Eddie Van Halen guys who was just like, or like a Neil Sean guy. I
Right.
have a lot of respect for for the precision players like that. That's a whole different thing. Gary was more of a vibe player, and he liked to make weird sounds with he liked the guitar to do, feedback, like that feedback at the beginning of Don't Let Him Go on the High Infidelity album. He
Yeah.
loved kind of weird stuff, but he also was open to working with me. And here's the thing about Gary and I: we didn't co-write songs in the traditional sense, but the way he influenced my songs and the way I influenced his songs, it's just it made the songs into the records that they became. And that's why I feel such a deep connection with songs like Riding the Storm Out and Take It on the Run, songs that Gary wrote. But I just feel like they're like Gary's not here anymore. So it's my job to look after them and continue performing them and let people hear them, And Dave is pretty true to those guitar solos on those songs because Dave respects Gary, but Gary and I used to work together on on a lot of those solos, because to me, like, the best guitar solos are ones that where the record comes on, and when the guitar solo gets there, you can kind of hum along to the guitar solo, like you recognize the guitar solo. It's not just somebody playing fast and
Wow.
flat.
It's also a hook. It's part
Right.
of the tune,
A part of the tune. It becomes part of the song. So Gary was really open to working with me as a singer, because I could kind of, inspire some melodic stuff in his playing. And so he fed off of that, and then of course he took it to a whole other level. And the famous story about Keep on Loving You, where I wrote this little piano song, and we never had a piano ballad before. We didn't even know what that was, and I was playing it at rehearsal, and everyone was just like, whatever, they were doing something else. What, I don't know what he's playing over there, but it's certainly not an REO Speedwagon song. And then finally Richrath got up, plugged his Les Paul into a stack of Marshalls. And to this day, I don't know if he was trying to play along or drown me out, so I would stop playing the song. But when he started playing along with this crunchy, nasty guitar sound, I stood up to the piano, I looked over at him, and we just had this connection. And it was like, the song had been born the night before in the middle of the night in my little home studio in Woodland Hills, but it came to life at SIR the next day when Gary put his guitar on it. And we'd never heard anything like that before. And it was like, okay, my little folk songs can become REO Speedwagon songs. Gary just has to figure out his guitar part of it, and once we made that connection, we were off and running.
Was there like some serious record company push to get it? Because High Infidelity is a completely different sounding REO Speedwagon from, from then on. At some point in 79, did they come up to you and go, hey, man, we need a big record or you're gone? This is what's going on. Billy Joel's hot right now. Commodores, like pop music.
It was never put to us that way. Irving had managed us from the beginning, and then Irving got too busy, and his partner John Barrick took over, and John had the same Irving mentality of management where they were fierce protectors of their artists, and still are to this day. So they would be the buffer between the record company and us. So we talked to the A&R guys sometimes. They just stop in the studio and listen and do some blow and leave. Yeah. So John Barrick would he sheltered us from that energy, but somehow we kind of understood that Epic had stood with us for 9 albums that did pretty well. Let's face it, except for a couple of the Murphy albums, had a rough go. The first album, when I got back in the band, didn't do too well, but the live album became our first gold record, and then the tuna record, you can tune a piano, but you can't tune a fish, went platinum. 9 Lives was a gold record. And so, we wanted to kind of keep the momentum going. But it's not like we were sitting there trying to be pop. I know that's probably how it looks from the outside, but we were just trying to, when I wrote Keep on Loving You, I felt, before I even wrote the chorus, I just wrote the verses, in the middle of the night, and those verses, they were different than any song I'd ever written. They were really, I really exposed myself emotionally, and it was really risky because I was talking about things that put my marriage in jeopardy, Yeah. And then later on, when the album title High Infidelity popped into my head as I was driving down the 101 into Sound City where we recorded, I walked into I called the band together, and I'm like, guys, I got the name I got the album title, and they're like, oh yeah, and I felt it so strongly. I go, High Infidelity. And they looked at me like I was from another planet. It's like, we can't name our album High Infidelity. That's insane. But I'm like, Keep on Loving You, Take It on the Run. The 2 most powerful songs on the record, that album title fit those songs. And we didn't plan it this way, but Take It on the Run was kind of like the answer to Keep on Loving You. And the story of that song, I mean, Gary and I had gotten together to listen to tapes and kind of show each other what songs we had before we went into rehearsal. And I was getting up to leave, and he goes, oh, hey man, I got this one slow one. And I was normally in charge of the slower song. Gary was in charge of the high energy stuff. So I'm like, he goes, I don't know if it's any good. I'm like, well, what the hell, play it for me. And it's like, heard it from a friend who heard it from a friend who heard it from another, you've been messing around. I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? That's the best opening line either of us have ever written in our life. I go, that's up there with I once had a girl, or should I say she once had me? I'm like, and then the song went on, and it was called Don't Bring Me Down at the time, and the payoff line of the chorus was Don't Bring Me Down. And I just organically, I said, you're under the gun, you take it on the run. And Gary was like, oh, yeah, that's it. And so that's how things happened back then. We were just like going for it, man. And we were we were not constricted by anything. We just felt that there was a vibe. There was a vibe in the band right then, and everybody was kind of going through some relationship troubles, and so we were all kind of in the same place emotionally. We were close. We were tight. We had a basketball court set up at every studio we went to, and we used to play 3-on-3 basketball in between sessions. So we kind of got it out, and then came back in the studio and made music. I mean, it was just a magic time for us, and boy, oh boy, we just learned that when you let it all out, when you're not afraid to tell the truth about what's going on in your life, people relate to it. And that album is just an example of what happens when you're fearless, I guess.
Well, looking forward to the tour. It's going to be fantastic. It's Styx, you, Kevin Cronin band, and then who's the opener? Folger?
Don Felder.
Yeah, Don Felder. Yeah.
You know,
oh man,
he can play a little guitar, you think?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's one of the classics, and I remember when the first Eagles album that he played on, I was like, wait a minute, I love the Eagles, but that ain't Bernie Ledden playing these guitar parts, you know.
Yeah.
No disrespect to Bernie. He was a great picker and a great banjo player and all that. But yeah, so it's Styx will be playing the whole Grand Illusion album plus the rest of their hits. Kevin Cronin Band, Dave Amato, Brian Hitt, Derek Hilland, who played in Whitesnake, he bounced around with a number of different bands on keyboards. He's incredible, great guy. Neil Dowdy, who he took over for Neil when Neil retired. Neil was one of his heroes when he was a kid, so it was a perfect fit there. And then, of course, we talked about Matt Bissonette, the great Matt Bissonette. And, I've been working with a vocal coach for the past 5 years. It changed my life. I feel better than ever.
Who are you working with?
I'm working with Jeffrey Allen, who is the head of the pop music department at USC. And my son, who's a great singer, he graduated from that program a couple of years back, and he would tell me, Dad, you got to work with Jeffrey. He'll change your life. And I'm like, yeah, right. I'm 69 years old. It's going to change my life. But one thing led to another. And I thought, through his whole life, I've been telling my son, I love you. I know you don't understand what I'm trying to tell you now, but trust me, I've got your best interest at heart, right? And if I'm sitting there going, this is my chance to show him that respect. So that's why I did it, and he was right. Changed my life.
Do you do that stuff online, like over Zoom?
I do it over Zoom. I don't have to drive into LA every time. I do 2 or 3 sessions a week. I go on the road. I'm backstage. Jeffrey zooms in, and man, he has changed my life. I look at singing from an entirely different perspective now. I'm not worried about losing my voice. I think I'm singing. Hey, I understand my limitations, but I think I'm pushing the envelope, and I'm getting the most. I'm using everything I got nowadays, and it's just fun. It's fun to perform. It's fun to be out there playing these songs and hearing the audience sing them back to me. And I got a great band with me. I got my great friends in Styx going to be on tour this year. I'm so grateful to them for having faith in me, because the tour would have probably been Styx, REO Speedwagon, and it would have been a no-brainer. And but they and it's kind of the circle being completed, because the first tour they did back in 2000, the first tour they did with Lawrence singing lead and no Dennis DeYoung, that was with REO Speedwagon, and so we believed in them, and Tommy Shaw is, I'm sorry, he's my friend and I love him, but that's not why I'm telling you that he's one of the great guitarists, one of the great singer, great songer. The guy is and a great performer, and just a sweet, beautiful human being. I mean, touring with them, part of the fun of it is, I get to walk out backstage and listen to Tommy play. It's a treat. And of course, Lawrence is an amazing singer. Their band, they sound so good live. And as Eddie Trunk says, what Eddie loves about the Styx and REO Speedwagon, or in this case, the Kevin Cronin band, is we're doing it live,
Yeah.
and hey, every once in a while, I'll miss something, as I'm singing, and I love being able to look at the audience and go, hey, at least I'm not singing to a track.
Yeah, exactly, man.
And
Exactly.
Styx is the same way. They sound so good. It's like you can't believe that they're doing it live, but they are. And
Oh yeah. I
it's going to
opened
be
for
fun
Styx
too.
about 20 years ago, and Tommy and his wife are so cool, man. So
Yes.
nice,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
All
That's
right.
awesome.
Well, looking forward to the tour. And
Yep.
when's it start?
We start in Greenville, South Carolina. I believe it's May 26th. Like it's that last weekend in May. We go through to the end of August. You should come out, man. Come on out and
100%.
and catch a show. Just I don't know who I don't know if you talked to someone in our office or if you talked to Eric Stein at
Yeah.
the PR firm. But we'll hook you up and come back and hang with us after the show.
Are you doing LA?
I'm sure we are. I don't have the whole.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, look it up. I'm sure we're somewhere, somewhere around here.
And hit me on Instagram if you want to see some comedy. Sometimes I'm in Santa Barbara or Oxnard, and
Nice.
have you come out and get some laughs.
I would come out. I'd love to come to. We have a little place in Oxnard, our little getaway place there, so I would love to come and see you, man. Let me know. Shoot me an email and I mean, can I give you my email over or
No,
without?
don't do that. Just
Okay.
give it to me off,
Okay.
and I'll hit you up
All
today.
right. All right. Sounds good.
I love you, dude. Thanks,
All
and
right, man. Thank you.
great history right there, man. REO Speedwagon. Oh, one last question. I grew up in San Francisco. Were you aware of that band REO Speed-dealer?
Yes, we were. We were. As a matter of fact, I walked into the famous old Tower Records on Sunset,
Yeah.
and no one admits it, but back in the day, if you were a band that made records, when you walked it, if you walked into a record store, you couldn't help but go back and look at because every band had its own little bin, right?
Of course.
And you'd want to see, are our records in stock? What's going on? So I go into Tower Records and I'm incognito because I don't want anyone to see me looking at our own albums. And there's a thing, and I see in with our albums, there's this REO Speed-dealer album. And I'm like, wait, I don't remember calling any of our albums REO Speed-dealer. But then I thought maybe it was one of the records they made when I was out of the band. I'm trying to figure it out. So I just called the office and I told John Barrick about it, and I think REO Speed-dealer might have gotten a phone call from John to say, guys, come on. You know what I mean? And I think if I'm not sure about this, but I think they were cool about it, and they ended up just taking off the REO and calling themselves Speed-dealer, which
Yeah. Yeah.
that made sense. But REO Speed-dealer, that was a little too close for comfort.
Well, they used to play gigs with another band called Medieval Knievel. Two amazing names.
Oh my God, that's funny. Yeah, REO Speed-dealer.
All right. I love you, bud. Keep
All right,
rocking.
man.
I'll see
Nice
you
to
this
meet
summer.
you, Dee. I will definitely see you. I'll be at one of your shows for sure.
I'll be at yours too. I can't wait to see that High Infidelity, all tough guys, Little Rascals on there, man. It's just like early comedy to me as Little Rascals, Three Stooges.
That me too. And that Little Rascals thing was totally unplanned. I mean, that was just another thing that just happened. Neil just happened to have his DVR, or was called a, I don't know, what did they call it back then? It was a video cassette machine that we used to use to record TV shows, and it just picked up that episode of The Little Rascals and Tough Guys, and he had just gone through a nasty divorce. The song "In Your Letter" what was about Neil's breakup, and and he was feeling pretty down at the time, and so we started. So he walked in with that video cassette, and we started referring to ourselves as the He-Man Woman Haters Club, because Neil's wife had done him so wrong, and then I wrote Tough Guys, and it was like, wait a minute, let's just tag that thing on the front. We had to jump through some hoops to get it, because it was a King Publications or whatever, but we ended up making friends with them, and so it just another just moment of magic for that High Infidelity album.
All right, buddy. I'll see you soon.
All right, thank you, man. Nice talking to you.
Thank you for doing the show, man. I really appreciate it.
It's been a total pleasure. You're just the best. It's nice to talk to somebody who really gets it. The fact that you played in a band and you're a performer and you know what it feels like to be up there on stage, and it's one of the scariest things you do, and it's one of the most rewarding things you do. But you got to deal with the scary part to get the reward, and so you understand that, and so I appreciate that. Much respect.
All right, I'll see you soon.
All right, man. Bye bye now.